Hey everyone! Welcome back to another episode of the podcast where we talk all about learning English in the most effective and realistic way possible. I'm Mia.
And I'm Jake. And today we're tackling a big question. Do you need to live in an English-speaking country to become fluent?
Spoiler alert, you don't. A lot of people think that moving to the US, the UK, or Australia is the only way to truly master English, but that's just not true.
Yeah. There are tons of people who live abroad and still struggle with English, while others who never leave their home country become completely fluent. So, what's the difference?
That's exactly what we're diving into today, how you can create an immersive English learning experience, no matter where you live.
Yep. So if you've ever thought, I'll never be fluent unless I move to an English-speaking country, stick around, because we're about to prove that wrong.
Alright, let's start with the biggest myth, this idea that you have to be in an English-speaking country to really improve. Where do you think that belief comes from?
I think it's because people assume that if you're surrounded by English 24/7, you'll just magically absorb it, like a sponge.
Yeah, but the reality is, it's how you engage with the language that matters, not just where you are.
Exactly. You could move to New York, but spend all your time with people who speak your native language, and guess what? Your English wouldn't improve much.
Meanwhile, someone who lives in their home country but actively listens, speaks, reads, and writes in English every day. That's the person who's going to see real progress.
Yes. So the key takeaway? You don't need to move to an English-speaking country. You just need to bring English into your daily life.
And that's totally possible, no matter where you live. So let's break down how to do that.
All right. First tip, immerse yourself in English as much as possible.
Yes, and that doesn't mean just studying English. It means surrounding yourself with it in a natural way through music, podcasts, movies, books, and even social media.
Exactly. If your phone is in your native language, switch it to English. If you watch TV, pick shows in English. If you scroll on social media, follow English-speaking creators.
Right. The more you hear and see English daily, the more natural it becomes. Even if you don't understand every word, your brain is constantly absorbing the language.
Yes. And let's talk about speaking, because this is where a lot of learners struggle when they're not in an English-speaking country.
Definitely. People say, I don't have anyone to practice with. But the truth is, there are so many ways to practice speaking even if you're alone.
100%. You can record yourself, talk to yourself in the mirror, or even use AI chat tools to simulate conversations. The key is to use English, not just study it.
Yes, and if you want real interaction, there are free ways to find conversation partners.
Oh, for sure. Language exchange apps, online communities, even social media. There are plenty of ways to connect with people who want to practice.
Exactly. And another big tip, think in English.
Oh, this is a game changer. If you can train your brain to think in English, you'll speak more naturally and fluently.
Yes, instead of translating from your native language, try describing what you're doing in English throughout the day. Like, I'm making coffee, or I need to go to the store.
It sounds simple, but it really helps. The more you do it, the faster your brain gets used to forming thoughts in English instead of translating everything.
And the best part, you don't need to be in an English-speaking country to do any of this. You just need to make English a part of your life.
Exactly. You can create your own English-speaking environment no matter where you are. It's all about being intentional with your practice.
So true, the people who become fluent aren't the ones who move abroad, they're the ones who use English every day, no matter where they live.
Yes. So if you've been waiting for the right conditions to start improving, stop waiting. You already have everything you need to become fluent right where you are.
Exactly. Fluency isn't about geography, it's about habits. If you make English a part of your daily life, you'll improve naturally over time.
Right. And another big thing that helps is setting realistic goals. Instead of just saying, I want to be fluent, break it down into smaller, clear goals like, I want to have a 5-minute conversation in English without translating in my head.
Yes, when you set specific goals, you can track your progress and stay motivated. Otherwise, it's easy to feel stuck because fluency is such a big, vague goal.
Exactly. And let's talk about reading, because that's another super effective way to improve no matter where you live.
Oh, definitely. Reading helps you build vocabulary, understand sentence structure, and even improve your pronunciation if you read out loud.
Yes, and you don't have to start with complicated books. Even reading short articles, blog posts, or children's books in English can help.
Right. The key is to read things you actually enjoy. If you force yourself to read something boring or too difficult, you'll lose motivation.
Exactly, and the same goes for listening. If you want to improve your listening skills, listen to content that interests you, whether that's podcasts, YouTube videos, or even audiobooks.
Yes, and a great trick is to listen to something twice first, just to get the general meaning, and then again to catch details you missed.
That's a solid strategy. And if you're watching something with subtitles, try watching once with subtitles in English, then again without them.
Yes, that helps your brain get used to understanding English naturally instead of relying on reading.
And speaking of listening, another powerful technique is shadowing. Have you tried that?
Oh yeah, shadowing is when you listen to a native speaker and repeat what they say immediately, trying to match their pronunciation and rhythm.
Exactly. It's one of the best ways to train your speaking and listening skills at the same time. And you don't need a partner, just a podcast, video, or even a song.
Yes, and the best part is, you can do this anywhere. While you're walking, doing chores, or even in the shower, just listen and repeat.
That's the thing, so much of learning a language is about building habits. If you make English part of your routine, you won't even have to think about practicing, it'll just happen naturally.
Exactly, and that's why people who create their own English environment improve way faster than those who just rely on formal lessons.
100%. So if you're listening right now and wondering, how can I improve without traveling? The answer is simple. Create an English world around you, and fluency will follow.
Yes, and remember, learning a language isn't just about studying, it's about living the language. The more you integrate English into your daily life, the more natural it will feel.
Exactly. And one thing that really helps is finding a way to make English fun. Because if it feels like a chore, you won't stick with it.
Yes, that's why I always recommend people learn English through things they already enjoy. If you love gaming, play games in English. If you love music, learn the lyrics of your favorite English songs.
Oh, for sure. I know people who learned English just by watching TV shows they loved. And because they wanted to understand what was happening, they picked up the language naturally.
That's the key. If you enjoy the process, you'll stay consistent. And consistency is everything when it comes to learning a language.
Exactly. You don't need to study for hours every day. Even 20-30 minutes of active practice can make a huge difference over time.
Right, and another thing, don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. A lot of people get stuck because they only practice the skills they're already comfortable with.
Yes. If you only listen to English but never speak it, your listening skills will improve, but your speaking won't. If you only read but never write, you'll struggle with written communication.
That's why a balanced approach is so important. Try to practice all skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing, so you improve in every area.
Exactly. And don't worry about making mistakes. The more mistakes you make, the faster you learn.
Absolutely. Mistakes aren't failures, they're proof that you're learning and pushing yourself.
Yes. And honestly, no one expects you to be perfect. Even native speakers make mistakes all the time.
Exactly. So don't wait for the perfect moment to start speaking or writing, just do it. The more you use English, the better you'll get.
100%. And one last thing, if you ever feel like you're not making progress, don't get discouraged. Learning a language isn't a straight path. There are ups and downs.
Yes, some days you'll feel like you're improving a lot. Other days, you might feel stuck. But as long as you keep going, you are making progress even if you don't see it right away.
That's so true. Language learning is a journey, not a destination. So just enjoy the process and trust that you're getting better every day.
Yes, and speaking of progress, one of the best things you can do is track it. A lot of learners feel stuck simply because they don't notice how much they've improved.
That's a great point. If you don't track your progress, it's easy to feel like you're not moving forward even when you actually are.
Right, and tracking doesn't have to be complicated. It could be as simple as keeping a journal in English, recording yourself speaking once a month, or even looking back at old messages you've written in English.
Oh yeah. Looking back at old messages or notes is so motivating. You'll probably realize that things that seemed difficult before feel easy now.
Exactly. It's proof that even when you don't feel like you're improving, you are. And that's what keeps you going.
Another great way to track progress is setting small challenges for yourself. Like This week, I'm going to have a 10-minute conversation in English, or I'm going to write a short story in English.
Yes, little challenges push you out of your comfort zone, and that's when real progress happens. Plus, they keep learning exciting.
Right. And honestly, the more fun and engaging you make it, the more natural your progress will be. Learning shouldn't feel like a chore, it should feel like an adventure.
Yes, because at the end of the day, English isn't just something you study, it's something you use. It's a tool to connect with people, learn new things, and open up new opportunities.
Exactly. So if you're listening to this and thinking, I'll never be fluent because I don't live in an English-speaking country, just know it's not about where you live. It's about what you do every day.
Yes, and if you're consistent, intentional, and open to making mistakes, you'll get there. It's just a matter of time.
100%. Keep pushing yourself, keep enjoying the process, and most importantly, keep going.
And speaking of keeping things exciting, another great way to stay motivated is by surrounding yourself with a community of English learners.
Oh yeah, having people to practice with makes a huge difference. Whether it's a language exchange partner, an online study group, or even just friends who are also learning English, it helps keep you accountable.
Exactly, and when you see other people going through the same struggles, it reminds you that you're not alone. Plus, you can learn from each other's mistakes and successes.
Yes, and don't be afraid to join online communities. There are so many language learning forums, Discord servers, and social media groups full of people who want to practice just like you. Oh, absolutely. And that brings up another tip: engaging with native speakers. It doesn't have to be in person. It could be as simple as following English-speaking content creators and leaving comments.
Yes, a lot of people think they need a native speaker to practice with one-on-one. But honestly, just interacting with native content can help so much.
Exactly. Even small things like reading the comment section of a YouTube video or joining discussions on Reddit can teach you natural phrases and expressions.
Oh, and speaking of natural English, pay attention to how people actually speak. Sometimes textbooks teach overly formal phrases that native speakers don't really use.
That's such a good point. A lot of learners get stuck sounding too robotic because they're following textbook English instead of real, conversational English.
Right, that's why listening to native speakers, whether in podcasts, interviews, or casual conversations, is so helpful. You start to pick up on the rhythm and flow of real English.
Exactly. And the more you listen, the more you'll start thinking in English instead of translating everything in your head.
Yes, and that's when things start to feel natural. When English stops feeling like a foreign language and starts feeling like something you just use, that's when you know you're making real progress.
Absolutely. And the best part is, once you reach that stage, learning becomes so much easier and more enjoyable.
Exactly. It's like a switch flips in your brain, and suddenly, English isn't something you have to think about, it's just there, ready to use.
Yes. And to get to that stage, you have to expose yourself to real English as much as possible. Not just grammar exercises or vocabulary lists, but actual conversations, shows, podcasts, things that sound natural.
Right, and another trick is to imitate native speakers. If you hear a phrase you like, repeat it out loud. Try using it in different contexts and really make it part of your vocabulary.
That's such a good point. I used to do that with movie lines. If I heard a cool phrase, I'd say it over and over until it felt natural.
Yes, and once you start doing that, you'll notice your English sounding more authentic. You'll start using phrases without even realizing it, just because you've heard them so many times.
Exactly. And honestly, that's why consistency is so important. Even if you're only practicing a little every day, the daily exposure adds up over time.
Oh, 100%. It's way better to practice for 15 minutes every day than for 3 hours once a week. Your brain needs constant exposure to really absorb the language.
Yes. And one thing that really helps is mixing up how you practice. One day, you might watch a video. The next day, you might write a short journal entry. Then, maybe you listen to a podcast.
Exactly. If you do the same thing every day, you might get bored or hit a plateau. But when you switch things up, it keeps learning fresh and fun.
And let's be honest, the more fun it is, the more likely you are to stick with it. That's what really matters in the long run.
Absolutely. When you enjoy the process, learning stops feeling like work and starts feeling like a natural part of your life. And that's when real progress happens.
Yes, and speaking of making learning a natural part of life, one thing I always recommend is habit stacking.
Oh, I love that. You mean adding English to things you already do, right?
Exactly. Like, if you always listen to music while commuting, switch to English songs or podcasts. If you scroll social media, follow English-speaking creators. It's all about making English part of your routine without extra effort.
That's so smart. It's like tricking your brain into learning without even realizing it.
Yes, and it's super effective because it removes the feeling of I have to sit down and study now. Instead, learning just happens naturally throughout the day.
Exactly. And another thing that helps is surrounding yourself with visual English reminders. Like changing your phone language to English or putting sticky notes on objects around your house with their English names.
Oh, I love that. It's such an easy way to stay connected to English all the time. Even just seeing the words regularly helps reinforce them in your memory.
Yes, and the more familiar English feels, the easier it becomes to use. Because let's be real, a lot of people struggle not because they don't know enough English, but because they're not used to using it in daily life.
That's true. Sometimes people know way more English than they think, they're just not confident enough to use it.
Yes, confidence is such a huge factor. And the only way to build it is by actually using English, even if you're not perfect yet.
Exactly. I always tell people, start speaking now, not after you feel ready, because if you wait until you feel ready, you'll never start.
100%. Confidence comes from practicing, not before it. The more you use English, the more natural it becomes, and the more confident you'll feel.
And once you start seeing small wins like having a conversation without struggling too much or understanding a movie without subtitles, it gives you such a huge boost to keep going.
Yes, and those little wins add up over time until one day you realize, wow, I'm actually fluent.
Exactly. And that's the best feeling, right? When you suddenly realize that English isn't a struggle anymore, it's just something you do.
Yes, and the cool thing is, fluency doesn't hit you all at once. It sneaks up on you in small moments like understanding a joke in English, replying automatically in a conversation, or watching a show without needing subtitles.
Right. It's those everyday moments that show you're making real progress, even if you don't always notice it happening.
That's why it's so important to trust the process. A lot of learners feel frustrated because they think they're not improving. But if they look back at where they started, they'd see how far they've come.
Oh yeah, that's huge. If you ever feel stuck, just think back to a time when even simple English felt difficult. I bet you'd realize that things that used to be hard now feel easy.
Exactly. That's why tracking progress even in small ways can be really motivating. Like, if you wrote a journal entry in English a few months ago, go back and read it. You'll probably see mistakes you wouldn't make today.
Yes, and that's proof that you're getting better, even if you don't always feel it. Learning a language isn't about big dramatic improvements. It's about small steps adding up over time.
Right. And another thing that helps is reminding yourself why you're learning English in the first place. Whether it's for travel, career opportunities, or just personal growth, having a clear goal keeps you motivated.
Absolutely. When you focus on the why, it gives you a reason to keep going even when things feel tough.
Yes, because let's be real, there will be tough moments. Every learner has days when they feel stuck or unmotivated. But the key is to push through those moments and keep going.
100%. Because if you keep going, you will get better. It's just a matter of time.
Exactly. Progress isn't always obvious, but if you stay consistent, one day you'll look back and realize just how far you've come.
Yes. And remember, learning English isn't about being perfect, it's about communicating, improving a little every day, and enjoying the journey.
So if you're listening to this and feeling discouraged, just know you are improving, even if you don't see it yet. Keep practicing, stay patient, and trust yourself.
And most importantly, have fun with it. The more you enjoy learning, the faster and easier it becomes.
Absolutely. So keep going, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Until next time, keep practicing and keep growing.
Bye.